Hello and welcome to Lesson 24 of Atonement Confirmation, to the lesson called Honoring God's Gifts to My Neighbors. We're on page 129 in your workbook. We'll be looking at the 7th and 8th commandments today. At the top of the page you have the 7th and 8th commandments. The 7th commandment, you shall not steal. What does this mean? We should fear and love God, that we do not take our neighbor's money or property or get it by dishonest dealing, but help him to improve and protect his property and means of income. The 8th commandment, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. What does this mean? We should fear and love God that we do not tell lies about our neighbor, betray him, or give him a bad name, but defend him, speak well of him, and take his words and actions in the kindest possible way. We'll begin by looking at the 7th commandment. To do this, we'll read 1 Kings chapter 21, verses 1 to 19. Pause the video here to read about how King Ahab stole Naboth's vineyard. Number 1. Ahab, king of Israel, noticed that a man named Naboth who lived nearby had a nice vineyard. Ahab wanted it for a vegetable garden, so he talked to Naboth about purchasing it. What did King Ahab offer for it? Look at verse 2. Ahab offered to buy it, or to give a better vineyard in exchange. He was willing to deal honestly with Naboth at first. Number 2. Why did Naboth turn down the king's offer? Look at verse 3. He says he didn't want to part with his inheritance. The inheritance in Israel's time was very important. God himself had portioned out the land for the people using his leaders long ago. And he had told them not to lose the portion they'd been given. If they came upon a hard time and had to sell it for a temporary period, God provided ways for them to get that land back at a later time. The inheritance was very important. It wasn't just losing money or property. It was connected with God. Number 3. Queen Jezebel schemed to get the vineyard for her husband. Why do you think she and Ahab not only stole the vineyard, but killed Naboth in the process? They wanted to get rid of Naboth so that they could take the vineyard without interference. Number 4. How did Ahab's sinful desire for something, coveting, as we'll see in lesson 25, lead him and Jezebel to further sins? His desire for the vineyard led to murder and stealing. And so we see that the sins that they do with their hands begin in their heart. In fact, all sins begin in the heart. They don't just happen outside us, they happen inside us too. Number 5. Jezebel also broke the 8th commandment, which we'll cover below in this lesson in more detail, by discrediting Naboth and ruining his reputation. Why would she do that rather than just killing him? She did that so that the people would think that Naboth deserved to die and she wouldn't be accused of murder. It would be correct for him to die if he had done those things, committed treason. Number 6. What was God's response through the prophet Elijah to this incident? Look at verse 19. He said that Ahab would die. Now we're going to turn the focus toward us. Pause the video here to read 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. What should our attitude be toward the things we have? We remember that everything we have really belongs to God, so we should be content. Everything that we have comes from God. It could be easy for us to think that we got it on our own, we worked hard for it, but ultimately it's God who's given it to us. He even gave us the ability to work. One of our key terms today is contentment. Contentment means being satisfied with what God has given and not always wanting more, whether He's given us very little or a whole lot, to be satisfied with what He has given us. Number 8. Martin Luther's explanation to the seventh commandment, the "What does this mean?" helps us understand how we should view the things others have. When we look at the gifts that God has given to other people, we want to help Him improve and protect His property and means of income. Read Colossians chapter 3, verses 22 and 23. Pause the video here to do that. And then answer the question, as a worker, how can we do that? By being good workers at our jobs so that our employer prospers. If we work hard and diligently serving God and our employer, then the hope is that our employer will make a lot of money, and in turn, because of that, he will also reward us, or she will also reward us. God uses our employers to bless us too. Number 9. Read these two passages, Proverbs 11, verse 25, and 1 Corinthians 10, verse 24. And answer the question, in general, how can we help people with the gifts they've been given? We can help them keep and improve their things, and when they don't have things, we can be generous toward them, helping them with the things that God has given us. Number 10. How does the seventh commandment serve as a mirror for us? What sin does it show us? It shows us that we've not been content with what we have, haven't been satisfied, that we've wanted to take what is not ours and possibly have even taken what is not ours. Could also apply to being careless with someone else's property and breaking it. I'm not talking about an unfortunate accident where we were doing the best we could, but being careless or even intentionally breaking something that belongs to someone else. And so as with all the commandments, we need to turn to Jesus. Number 11, how did Jesus keep the seventh commandment in our place through his active obedience? Jesus never stole anything. He was always generous with everything he had. While Jesus lived on earth, he was not rich. He had very little. In fact, he says, foxes have holes, but the Son of Man does not have a place to lay his head. And yet he was generous, always obeying the seventh commandment. Number 12. How did Jesus solve our continued breaking of the seventh commandment through his passive obedience on our behalf? Jesus died to forgive us for the times we haven't been content or have wanted to steal something. He died to take away the punishment for stealing and all the sins related with the seventh commandment, and he perfectly obeyed the commandment. And by faith in him, that counts for us. God sees us as never have stolen or been being unsatisfied. And so now, because we've been forgiven and because God sees us as having kept the seventh commandment, number 13, how does the seventh commandment serve as a guide for us? How does it teach us to say thank you to God? We thank God by being content with what he's given us, with what we have, and by helping others protect their property, their gifts from God. We have a chart on the top of page 131. We see that the ability to work and the gift or inheritance we receive on earth, they are all God's gift of possessions. They all come from him. They are his ways to provide. That he gives them to us to provide for our families, to help the needy, to pay taxes to the government, and also to support the work of the church. One man that I know, a Christian man, says, God has never blessed me so that I can keep it all for myself. He blesses me so that I may bless others. And so, following the seventh commandment, we do want to be content, to do faithful work, to help others and be thankful, grateful. We do not want to be wasteful, commit robbery, steal, be greedy, dishonest, or lazy. We now turn our attention to the eighth commandment. To do that, we're going to look at 2 Samuel chapter 15, verses 1 through 6, and see how Absalom undermines King David's authority. Turn to 2 Samuel chapter 15 and read those verses. Pause the video here to do so. Absalom was King David's son, though not God's chosen heir to the throne. He was one of David's many sons. He sought to win the kingship by being the most popular person in the kingdom and by damaging his father's reputation. So number 14, how did Absalom seek to steal the hearts of the people of Israel away from God's chosen representative, his father, King David? He made promises to change things if he were king, if he were in charge. If only I were king in Israel, then your case would be heard, implying that because King David was king, their case would not be heard. They weren't being taken care of. Number 15. Absalom very subtly ruined David's reputation and good name. How did he do that? He did that by making the people think that David was a bad king, a king who didn't care for them, who didn't love them. He ruined David's reputation. Reputation is one of our key terms today. It means what people think of you. Number 16. Read Colossians 3 verse 9, Proverbs 11 verse 13, and 1 Timothy 5 verse 13. Pause the video here to do that. And then answer the question, what are some ways that we might hurt someone's reputation? There are several different ways to hurt someone's reputation. You could do it by lying about them, about sharing a secret that they've shared with you with other people who don't need to know it, or just by gossiping with them. You notice that only one of these three is telling something that's not true. The other two, sharing a secret or gossiping about them, are both true, or could be true. The problem is that we share those truths about them with the intention of ruining their reputation. Did you hear about so-and-so? Gossip is one of our key terms. Gossip are words that hurt someone's reputation, whether they are false or true. Number 17. Read Luke chapter 7 verses 1 through 5. Pause the video here to do that. And answer the question, how did the Jewish people build up the centurion's reputation before Jesus? They spoke well of the centurion and talked about the good things he had done, building a synagogue. Number 18. What are some ways that we might improve someone's reputation? We can do that by saying good things about them, defending them to others. Perhaps that's really hard to do because we wonder if someone who tears down someone else may also tear us down when we try to defend them. But that's what God calls us to do. Number 19. Why is it important for someone to have a good reputation? A person's reputation will influence others, either to trust or not trust that person. Number 20. Why is a good reputation important for us, we who are to tell others about Jesus? It's important because we want people to trust what we tell them. If we're talking to them about Jesus, but they've heard bad things about us, our reputation's been ruined by someone else, they won't want to hear about Jesus. Number 21. In the explanation, the what does this mean, Martin Luther said that we should take words and actions in the kindest possible way. What does this mean? It means assuming the best, no matter what someone says or does, which isn't always easy. We often judge people's intentions by what they do, while we judge ourselves primarily by our intentions over what we do. Turning the focus toward us. How does the eighth commandment serve as a mirror for us? What sins does it show us? The eighth commandment shows how often we hurt people's reputations, either by what we say or by what we don't say, not defending them, and how often we do not take people's words and actions in the best way, but instead assume that they are out to hurt us. Number 23. How did Jesus keep the eighth commandment in our place? Through his active obedience. What did Jesus do to keep the eighth commandment? Jesus always looked out for people's reputations, and he always protected those reputations. Number 24. How did Jesus solve our continued breaking of the eighth commandment? Through his passive obedience on our behalf. How did he take away our sin? Jesus' death and resurrection assure us that our sins of hurting people's reputations are forgiven, that we are at peace with the holy God, that we may enter heaven even though we have broken this commandment, because Jesus kept this commandment for us and died to take away the punishment for it. Number 25. How does the eighth commandment serve as a guide for us? Now being forgiven by Christ and having his perfection applied to us, how do we say thank you to God? We thank God for his forgiveness by protecting other people's reputations and taking their words and actions in the kindest possible way. Before we get to our lesson question today, there's a chart on page 133 that says God's gift of a good name. Even the reputation we have is a gift from God. And recognizing that, we do want to defend others, speak well of others, speak up for others who can't speak for themselves, and take people's words and actions in the kindest possible way. We do not want to lie, betray, give anyone a bad name, gossip about them, speak hurtful words. In that way, others will respect and also trust us. Our lesson question is, how do I protect what God has given to others? I won't steal from others. Instead, I will help them protect and improve what is theirs, not just their possessions, but also including their reputations. That's our lesson for today. Please do the homework on the Moodle site as well as the associated memory work. Until next time, God bless you.